Okay, so hello. Thank you
Hi.
so much for being part of this interview. This is the first one in this Broken Mirror series. And it's 10 questions, and they're all going to be about acting, pretty much.
Cool.
So, first off, will you take a moment to introduce who you are?
Sure. My name is Ang Bey or Angela Bey. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am a non-binary queer actor based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised. I practice other things and other artistic mediums, but I've been acting the longest of all of those things. I act in theater, film, performance artwork, and I also write, which is really, really exciting. A new door opening up to link those things.
And direct.
And I direct. Yes, I'm currently directing Ben in a show that's happening outside in Philadelphia. Nice classical theater show.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. So we're going to start off really easy. Question number 1. What is acting?
Oh my God. Ben asked me if I wanted the questions beforehand, and I was like, no, surprise me.
I know, but here's also something that I'll say is one of the purposes that I'm trying to get across with these interviews is to have so many different people answer the same question, so other people who are witnessing them can realize that there is no one way, and that acting and how we approach it in an individual's craft is all hyper subjective and made up, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to potentially remove the burden of having to have a beautiful, articulate answer.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, what is acting? Acting is make-believe. Acting is play. Acting is fun. As an artistic practice, it's for me, all of my like childhood fantasies of like making up stories in my bedroom come to life and put into a profession. So acting is telling stories, and the proximity to reality can vary depending on the style and the kind of story that you're telling. But at the end of the day, it's for me one grand fantastical experiment. That's what acting is for me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. What is your relationship to acting right now?
Yeah, okay. That's a really good question. Acting and I are in a toxic relationship right now. Yeah, we have some boundaries we need to set, and that's because I've done it the most in my life. It's been like the go-to way for me to express myself, the go-to way for me to like feel good about doing something in like a career path. And like any long-term relationship, you're going to have like built up resentments. You're going to have, you're going to change. And I think I'm in a sort of like renaissance of self, and acting is also wrapped up in that. So I'm really excited to come out of this period with my relationship to acting better in the way that I articulate my needs, articulate the kinds of stories I want to commit myself to telling professionally, because now acting has become my job.
Yeah.
And so thinking about it with like a capitalistic sheen has been something I've been trying to avoid for a very long time. And now it's the inevitability of choosing to, be an artist full time. So acting and I are in a very tense but formative and inevitable place. I'm excited to redefine my relationship to it and discover it's not this pure thing like you were saying in the first question. It's not this pure like articulatable thing. Like, of course, we go to acting school and we have a skill set, and we our bodies are our instruments. All of that is still true, But, you know, as a multi-hyphenate storyteller, I'm realizing that I have the capability to not only just create more opportunities for myself in acting, but create opportunities for other people that maybe wouldn't have seen themselves represented in the stories that I'm used to telling, whether it be a Shakespeare show or, you know, something more contemporary that speaks to our time.
Yeah.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great.
Okay. I have so many sidebars to pick and choose from everything that you just gifted this interview with, but I'm planning on just sticking to these tight 10. You know what I mean? So we'll move on to question 3. How, maybe you went into this a little bit, and if so, let us know. How's your relationship with acting changed over the years?
Yeah, I was just saying to a loved one, I remember very clearly the day that someone called my acting work, and I remember very clearly the feeling of disgust and confusion in that relationship. And so, like I said before, acting for me and the arts in general, it's something that I was born and raised on. Living in West Philadelphia, having parents with an artistic sense who really pushed me to, you know, do what I love first and not necessarily the thing that would make me the most money down the line. Yeah. I, you know, grew up going to theater camps and singing in the choir and even writing stories and poetry. And so it was always for me a way of, and I was a very lonely kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was a crybaby. And so I needed an outlet that was safe and also allowed me room to explore all of my imagination. And I really learned how to be myself through theater specifically. And so that was the seedling of this thing. It was just something that was always fun and then became a lifeline for me. And then growing up and realizing, oh, I can get accolades for this. I can get money for this. I can, you know, eventually do this as a career. That was both a blessing and a curse, that awakening and that dawn of theater and film and acting as work. And so that's the real change. It's the passion is there, the connection and relationship to acting is there and always has been there. And now it feels like this third party thing, which is capitalism, has a really large part in the relationship. This is very pure relationship that I once had with this industry. Can you just, I want soup and guacamole. Yeah, sorry. Can I restart that? Are you gonna cut this up?
Yeah, I'll cut it up.
Okay. This really pure thing that, so this relationship to this really pure thing sort of definitely got morphed into something more. It diluted really what I wanted, diluted the heart of what I wanted to do, which was just always just play, pretend, experiment, and explore the full breadth of my imagination. Yeah, that's the way that I can concisely say it.
Yeah, heard. I'm curious, as these interviews progress, everything that you say, I also want to be yeah, let's talk about that. But I think very quickly those types of interviews turn into hour-long interviews, and maybe that's something that this will become. But we'll see. So heard, and it's what everyone talks about regarding show business, right? So much of the industry is, one of the things that a teacher of mine said, Ben Mathis at Crash Acting, was that people don't quit acting or stop being an actor because they hate exploring the craft and taking on characters. They hate it because the industry, or attempting to navigate a professional career within the professional acting industry, is terrible for one's self-esteem, right? It's tricky. Acting is great. Being an actor is terrible in a lot of ways.
Branding yourself, I that still gets me. branding yourself, having to keep a list of every single thing you've ever done and then put them in ranked order on a piece of paper to show casting directors. It's crazy to me, and so like antithetical to the ways in which I thought of this industry in my first like falling in love in our courtship period, which was when I was literally like 7 years old. My first role was a tree in Little Red Riding Hood. I didn't have any lines. I was just like the tallest person in my class, and I had the biggest smile on my face because
they're so grounded.
Yeah, I was so grounded.
It's also interesting to me that your first definition of acting was it's make-believe, which I see the line to you discovering acting as a child, which is when it feels the most like make-believe in a super pure sense. So that's lovely that the grounded heart connection from your discovery of acting is still as now a professional working artist with accolades, writer, director, that's exactly still where it begins in your definition.
Because because there's boundary there too, right? Like
sure.
always reminding yourself that at the end of the day, you are telling a story that is not your own. And for me, I need those very clear boundaries as like a very empathetic, emotional person. Because a lot of the work that I have gotten recently has been very dramatic and has been stories that are about trauma and about struggle and about pain. So if you, as an actor, invest your full self into those stories and really start to believe those as true, bringing in lived experience, there's several different methods that I'm talking all around here that I've, tried on and then put away in the closet over the years. For me, the answer was always, finding and believing what is true, which is that this is a fiction. This is a fiction. And my job as an actor is to tell that story as honestly and earnestly as possible. But that does not mean that I have to bleed on stage every night in a way that I can not come back from. Sure. Part of being an actor is having the ability, and this is the toolbox conversation, right? Having the ability to like put away the work and come home and live your life at the end of the day. That's the sustainability part of it as well.
Yeah, and the boundary work, which is so important. So this is a lovely segue into question 4, which is another super easy one. How do you approach a role? How do you build a character? How do you make things real for yourself? What's your process? If you can answer that.
Yeah, sure. I'm finding that it's different for every role, honestly. Let me see if I can think of something more recent. So I just did Fabulation by Lynn Nottage as Undine. And if you've read that play, she never leaves the stage, and she's a very complicated, complex character, and a lot of things happen to her all at once. Things that are out of her control. And this play is so brilliant because she, fabulates her whole story the whole way through, and she never lets go to this imaginary version of herself until really the end of the play, this super constructed version of herself until the end of the play. And so I had the luxury of knowing that I was going to play this role for about a year because of COVID.
Wow. Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was going to tackle this show, not just from like a psychological character perspective, but also from a technical perspective. I have page-long monologues every single page. And so it was like, or on nearly every single page. So it was the hardest technical role that I've done as an actor in theater. And so I found that the best way to prepare for that role was to know the play as well as possible, which is not to mean that I memorized the whole show before I got into the rehearsal period. But was to mean that I read it and listened to it as many times as possible. And also just began to think about thematically and perhaps even dramaturgically what the story was. that Lynn intended to be told, like what the thesis of this play is. And for me, like thinking about this character of Undine, who for lack of a more encompassing word could be painted as a villain or is the villain of her own story. It's really important as an actor to not, come in and judge your character, because they're full people and they, and they make decisions that are rational to them. They have objective truths that are objective to them, because objective truth doesn't exist. And so I really had to come into this role thinking more holistically and less selfishly and independently of like, who is Undine? And that really opened me up to getting into the rehearsal room and working with the best director I've worked with in Philly. Because I didn't know her style before. It was the first time we worked together, and I had no idea the direction in which she wanted to take this play. And
who is the director? Let's shout them out real quick.
Amina Robinson, Miss Amina Robinson. She's amazing, and she works at Temple. And she's a decorated actor herself. She's like in a billion other things. Go on her website. She's amazing. Yeah, and so it was really important for me as Undine to remain as flexible and generous as possible to the process, because if I came in locked in with a very specific idea of what this character was, then the whole play would have to be built around me in a way that is really self-serving and really selfish. And the show was excellent because the ensemble was excellent, and ensemble including me, and so my approach to that role was to think about it as an ensemble role, and was to think about it more holistically, and be really open and flexible. Whereas, initially on the page, I'm telling you, it psyched me out how many lines and how many scenes and how many beats I thought I had to make, just looking at it, even in the audition prep for it. So that was very specific to that specific play.
Terrific. Terrific. Sure. Yeah. I think it's brilliant advice to imagine every role that we would take on as an ensemble or pivotal piece to the intended story that we as a collective will discover together, right?
That is also already there on the page. Like the script is always the Bible,
Sure.
And maybe it's me as a playwright talking a little bit, but the playwright intends every single word on that page is intentional. And especially for plays that are Pulitzer Prize winning, that have been produced a billion times, there's a reason for it. And so part of our jobs as actors, even when we get breakdowns for roles to audition for, at least for me, I'm in a part of my career where I'm like, do I really want to audition for this show? Or do I want to take like another project that is more aligned to my mission statement? So we can get to other things about that. But with this show, for me, Lynn Nottage was such a pull. Amina was such a pull. And the potential of like playing any character in this ensemble piece was a pull. And the story, which was already written, already decided before I even was a conversation in the room, that was the biggest thing for me. So yeah, definitely thinking more holistically and less selfishly about the craft has been a huge turning point for me as an actor.
Yeah, that's the best. Can you describe a theatrical moment, either witnessed or experienced, that you'll never forget?
Oh, yeah, let me think. So, controversial opinion time. I really love Slave Play by Jeremy O. Harris, and it's a very contentious play. I saw it twice on Broadway. In both times, I was moved by the third act of the play, where the Black woman, the titular Black woman, Kamisha, is talking to her white partner. And both actresses, in both iterations, very different in like how I actually like felt in like a minutiae sense at the end of the play. Both times I saw it, but the similarities are that they were both unforgettable experiences, because they both like pulled different things out of me. And so I'll just say that the third act of Slave Play, and both of the times that I saw it, which was before the original production and then the revival, and it wasn't just my love of that play and Jeremy's work in that play, or even Robert O'Hara's direction of that play, but it was more so seeing these two Black women make sense of such a hard role and such a hard time, like contemporarily, like this, the time on Broadway for this show to have happened, and all of the stuff built up around it and sort of clouding it, and and all of the honest opinions about how the work is really violent to a lot of different kinds of people, especially Black women. So to see these two Black women make sense of that really hard story in the final beats of the play, especially, it's really, really inspiring and really, really challenging for me as a Black femme in the audience, especially one in a very loving interracial relationship with a white man. And that for me unlocked a lot of like, this is why adult Ange does theater. This is the reason why, to like be a part of work like this, to make audience members feel the way that I did coming out of both of those times and both of those productions. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you see a performance and it's just like a revolution in your body, where you like walk outside and you're like, this is why. And those are rare. Those are really rare. That's fantastic. Okay. Question 6. Man, what is an artist's responsibility?
I immediately when you said that, I thought of the James Baldwin quote that he says about the responsibility of the artist, which is, there's a few that he says, but the most immediate one is to reflect the world back to itself. And he has a real keen understanding and sense of social responsibility that's bound up in the artist's plight, that adult Ange definitely relates to, and definitely as like a mission statement, integrity driven artist, thinks a lot about. And it can be really paralyzing, actually, because especially in the mainstream theater and film world, you're always going to be butting up against institutions that do not ultimately want to change the status quo, and are like, at their root entrenched in really harmful isms that, especially for an artist like me and all that who I am when I walk into a room, and all the preconceived notions that people have about me when I walk into space, it can be really, really paralyzing, debilitating, and harmful. And so, what the responsibility as an artist is for me, I am learning that I have my mission statement. I have, my keen sense of trying to maintain integrity. I have, a real desire to tell stories of the outsiders, of folks that are marginalized, of folks like me that didn't see themselves really represented on stage until my teens, and I have been doing it since I was 7. And so there's part of my artist's plight that is absolutely all of that. And then there is the part of me that is an artist that is still that 7-year-old person who just wanted to play pretend and just wanted to experiment, and made little dolls out of plastic bags and told stories in my room. And so my responsibility is right now is to myself, and holding the full breadth of my humanity, and trusting that all of the art that I create will be earnest, at least in some way, whether it's managed by an institution or funded by an institution or created in my living room. My responsibility to myself is to always tell the truth, or to always have the seedling of every project I do come from an earnest passionate place. So I think the artist's responsibility is to be earnest, is to always be earnest. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
The artist's responsibility is to be earnest.
And that will invite controversy too. I mean, I talked about Jeremy O. Harris. Like, there are a lot of people that hate that man. Like, but you know, for theater artists like him, and even artists in general that are like him across medium, there are always going to be people that are going to hate you when you tell the truth about how you feel, or yourself, or the world. You know, like, I'm not interested in maintaining status quo. I'm not interested in safety, like safe art for me and safe art for other people, like in the sense of like things that don't challenge anything.
Sure.
So that's just my commitment. That's my responsibility, to be earnest in that.
Yeah, and just regarding to reflect the world, obviously the world itself is so multi-nuanced and faceted, right? So there's absolutely room for boundary pushing, edgy, unsafe, but deeply thought through political and social art, because that exists. And there's room for like farty, nine-tentacled monster imagination, right? Because that obviously lives in us too as children. And thank you. Okay, so 7. What's something that you, Ange, know now that you wish a younger version of yourself had known?
That it doesn't matter that you don't have any friends.
Yeah.
You'll find your people. You'll find the people that also didn't have any friends growing up. You will find the weirdos. And actually, you know, like, I'm so grateful to theater in a lot of ways, but I'm also so grateful to Philly's theater community and film community, because I have found that most of the people that I'm close to in this industry were the outsiders. We're the people that the world created a hostile environment for. And, you know, even my loved ones, my chosen family that aren't in this industry, what is shared is this earnestness of spirit, of life orientation, of, you know, care and love. And so I would definitely tell younger Ange to not worry about not being invited to that party, or like that the bullies are absolutely just projecting their own insecurities onto you, and that their perfectionism doesn't exist. There is no like finish line to cross in terms of like being a good person, or a person that is worthy of love. And there are things about yourself that you don't even know yet, that I don't even know now, that people see and they marvel at. And all of that makes you human. And it's okay to make mistakes too. That's a big thing that I would tell young Ange.
I want to add a brief 7.5 question.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to think about it too much.
Okay, great.
What does future Ange know that they would want current Ange to know now?
All right. Take the time to rest. Take more time to rest. I know you're thinking of doing it right now, but you need to do more.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
And to trust the speed of your journey. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that resonates with me as well. Okay. Favorite training or class that you may or may not have touched in a long time?
Okay. Oh my God. I mean, I'm going to keep talking about Fabulation because it was such a formative, wonderful experience that broke me and then put me back together again in such a wonderful way. But seriously, like that role in that process was a masterclass for me. So all the shouts to Amina Robinson. that is the most immediate thing for me that I can think of. But I'm really excited to explore more Black acting methods specifically. And I just befriended a new friend who was a part of the test group for the book that is now the Bible for that. And so I'm very excited to talk to them about their experience working with that thinker, that revolutionary thinker in our community. So Fabulation as a master class that I happen to get paid to do, and also future and Black acting methods.
Yeah. Is there anyone? No. Yeah, not a question that I already had. Is there anyone specifically that other Black actors should know to learn more about Black theatrical practices and craft and explorations?
Yeah, I mean, check in with me when I'm done reading the book. But in Philadelphia, Ozzie Jones, really formative for me in my high school years. Definitely check out Ozzie. He's coming out of the Freedom Theater ilk. So if you were part of Freedom Theater back in the day, you will know Ozzie. I'll also say all the work that Theater in the X is doing, a lot of those folks are out of theater, Freedom Theater actually. So especially for Black performers in the city, getting connected with Theater in the X for not only just like the, how do I become an actor, but also how do I find community as an actor here in Philadelphia, where the majority of the people that live here are Black, and our stories aren't that is not represented in the stories on stage in the mainstream houses. So I would say that as well. Power Street Theater Company offers really excellent classes for people aligned with the Latin diaspora as well. So there's also intersections to Blackness. Same with PAPA, Philadelphia Asian and Performing Artists. They do classes. Yeah, all of the sort of global majority collectives in the city, I would absolutely check out. And they're not perfect organizations either. Like, they're full of humans with full stories and
Sure.
full lives. But like, you know, you're a full human looking for a very specific thing as well. So I think that you in the big sense will find something out of those organizations too.
Yeah. And we will create links for those as well.
Excellent.
I don't know what format this will be, but if that's possible, I'll
Yeah,
throw it
yeah.
in there. So unintentionally, another nice segue, or maybe these questions are just, I was just really on my game when I wrote these, but what do you wish to see more of in the industry?
Yeah, more risk. And then like, and not just risk in like, ooh, provocative art, but like risk in how we run theater companies. I've seen the underbelly of multiple beasts in this town, and the film industry it's like Cerberus, like you cut off a head and another head pops up, and theater is like this too. But I think there is more. I think there's more fertile ground to actually revolutionize the way that we produce the work in theater. Whereas I feel film is an industry that is so entrenched in capitalism and is not going anywhere anytime soon, that to revolutionize that industry would take a whole lot of energy that I don't think a lot of people have at the moment, especially those of us that are actors.
Yeah.
But in smaller industries like the ones here in Philly, I think we have real momentum in holding each other accountable and to taking the risk and perhaps even failing at making a more equitable space in producing work. And I've seen a lot of potential energy, and then that gets squandered over fear.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage, and I would want to see people lean more into the discomfort of that. And I think a lot of people are afraid because a lot of people are afraid of losing community, or like the jig is up sort of mentality of like, oh no, like I've constructed this version of myself that maybe is like palatable to my friends on Facebook, but if people only knew the real me. And I want to challenge that I want to challenge all of us to really hold each other in the full breadth of our humanity and really begin to make really intimate relationships with each other, and not just what we think each other are. And I think that'll help us take more risk as an industry as well.
Yeah.
In Philadelphia.
I think that's very articulately stated. And I think it also is, what's the word it also encapsulates everything that we've been, or rather you've been discussing regarding how you approach your art with integrity and earnestness, right? As well as even going back to who are you as a kid, the kid who didn't have any friends, but because of that, I'm perhaps projecting, so cut me off if I'm wrong. When you're someone who from a young age has dedicated to the exploration of who am I, as opposed to who do I have to be so I have friends or get friends, then later when you're older, you're interested in work that is also questioning who am I, who are we underneath the bullshit, right? And who can we be if we all unmask ourselves to create and tell stories focused on the exploration of identity and what really matters, right? So it's lovely to see you answer all of these questions that are brand new that you haven't heard, but your through line of integrity and truth is so clearly grounded in who you are, both as a presentation and the underbelly. So that's really cool. How can we, sorry, go ahead.
I'll just say that like what you described as like having the who am I impulse before sort of thinking about who do I need to be in order to get friends. It actually was the inverse for me, where I thought really heavily about who I needed to be, tried those things on, then realized it did not fit and discarded them. And so like it sort of happened, maybe not inversely, but simultaneously. Yeah. And I think also just the experience of being like a Black American too. And W.E.B. Du Bois talks about this thing, double consciousness. And that was absolutely happening for me in my formative years, being like one of 3 Black people in my classes growing up. And like, so I already had like that like toolkit of thinking about things complexly and not about like perfected islands or perfected lanes. And I think a lot of what we get caught up in, and I feel like this is changing now that like we're coming out of cancel culture and we're coming more into like equability and accountability culture. But I think even in cancel culture and woke culture, there's this idea of perfectionism that is actually not useful, and it's actually white supremacy in a hood, you know?
100%.
Like, and so I want to push us into not the whitewashed version of whatever this accountability culture can be, which I also see happening simultaneously in this complex way that I like to think about the world and sort of oriented by force. What I would really like to see is more nuance in spaces where change is happening or is purported to be happening. Nuance and sustainability. Yeah.
We have 58 seconds before this Zoom call is cut, because I don't know if you know, 2-person Zoom for free is deaded. So we only get 40 minutes. So these are the last 2 questions. How can we support you? What's a project or a show or something we should know about? How can we support you? And then who should we invite next for this interview?
Oh, excellent. You can support me on my website. It's angbey.com, angelabey.com. All of my projects are there. I won't go into detail about them. I'm actually taking a hiatus from acting this season to work on other things. So if you want to see me practice other things, that's a great place to find out what I'm doing. The next person you should invite on this series. Oh my God. I know so many excellent actors in this city. Oh my God. Oh, okay. Hold on. Oh, I can do this.
Oh,
Josie Ramirez.
Say again?